Hey, welcome back, everybody. It's time for one of our favorite shows, This Week with Wendy. You know the show that talks every week about, well, she talks about the state of the market and the state of what's going on. We're going to get into that big today. And she does so from a basis of working decades in real estate brokerages in Silicon Valley and elsewhere. And after which she decided, there's another way to do this. And she started a company called Veracity Real Estate to prove the truth in that statement. And in the time, she created a company that she says has a commitment to bespoke client advocacy at all price levels. Something you don't see unless you're really in the high-end market here. Wendy's built a company through it all of data-driven decision divas. These are people who look at the real data and try and make sense of it, which we're going to try and do today here with her. So welcome, if you will, Wendy Ross. Hey, Wendy.
Hey, good morning, Paul.
Our thoughts are with Kara, your usual sidekick, who's going through some parental emergencies. I've been there. It's a difficult transition stage in life when you're taking care of aging parents and their health starts to fail. So we'll send out positive waves and thoughts here today for Kara.
That's terrific. I know. Send all the love to Las Vegas because she needs some love.
Yeah. Well, I need some love because I feel like I'm falling, Wendy. I feel like I'm falling and I can't get up here. The stock market today, we're doing this on November 13th for those who listen later. After going, it was kind of...
It's not November, honey.
Oh, my God. It dropped 900 points today. I remember when the president used to have to come on the evening, address the nation. I think it was Reagan or somebody had to do this once. I want to say like in the 80s. Mm-hmm. And the market dropped 1,000 points. Mm-hmm. Everybody, now 900 points and tomorrow it'll be up 900 points, we think. And next week it's down 1,000 points. And it's just this crazy world we live in.
Yeah. Everything has become more immediate, and the swings happen faster, up and down, in all the markets. But why did you say this is airing in November?
Did I say November?
You did.
Oh, well, see, I don't want anybody to hear this for a while. We're going to hold this one. Boy, there's a Freudian slip. This is airing in November, September. This is September of 2022.
Oh, maybe I should just have you hold it, because if what I predict is wrong, you just yank it.
We'll yank it right off. Oh boy, you caught me on that one.
Right now. Oh, we can't. It's live.
It's live. You said it. That's it. All right. Well, I just got to tell you that it feels like it feels like something's going to fall. I'll set this up because I know you got some data as always here to talk about real estate.
Sure.
As you know, we had a prior show with Barry Saywoods talking about commercial real estate this morning. He had a guy who's a big, I guess he's an investor, whatever, up in Santa Monica, and he was talking. They were both talking about everybody wants answers. Mm-hmm. And the only answer is right now, well, I don't know. We'll see.
It
Maybe.
could be this.
It
could
depends.
be that.
Yeah. Everybody's waffling. Nobody wants to come.
Well, that's because we're coming out of the cesspool, this vast uncharted territory. I mean, these waters were troubled by so many different sources that it's like, who could know?
That's kind of what he was saying. He said, how do you make sense of all the different streams flowing through here, all the different currents? That was the word he used, all the different currents flowing through. And so how do you break this down? We had somebody on, I remember when the pandemic started here, and everybody thought, the sky did fall for a while, and then it just picked right back up, and it was sunny the next day. The market rebounded. Housing prices did not go through the floor like they did in the Great Recession. Mm-mm. In fact, they did the opposite. They went up.
It was bananas.
Yeah, and so it was the opposite. And we had a guy who was on, I think he was the chief economist for Northern Trust Bank, big deal. Mm-hmm. And afterwards, he did all this, well, we'll see, and maybe, and historically, and this, and blah, 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 blah.
Right.
And after I said, just tell me. He says, you tell me when these forces all collided like this. I can't, we're always looking backwards to predict the future.
Right.
There's never been anything like this, so therefore I can't predict the future because I only know how to look at past data or current data and make sense of it here.
And we have to guess. And then I think the biggest part of the pandemic was the human emotional response to it.
Yeah.
There was this fear, there was desperation, there was this refocus of what's important and clamoring to get families together under one roof. There were so many different motivators.
And of course, you've had Barry on your show and you've been on his show, and his take on all this is he just thinks a lot of this is driven by fear and emotions rather than rational decision making. Like, I don't really understand the cap rates and all that stuff that well, but if you're borrowing money at 5%, and and the cap rate is, I guess, at 3%, which caps how much you're going to make. Why are you borrowing money at 5 to make 3? He said it's just unsustainable, but people are doing it because they're assuming it'll go back up, or
Right.
they've got
They're
to,
banking on
or they
futures.
got to put the money somewhere, and they got to avoid taxes because they're just sold this, so they what do they call a 1031 exchange. I've plopped it into this and that, so even though I'm going to lose money, it's less than I would if I had to pay the tax on that capital gain that I pay. Crazy decisions like that.
Right.
Things
Right.
driving it. All right, so what do you got? Give us some numbers there.
Well, we're going to talk about whether the market is crashing,
Yeah.
correcting, or
Or just
I love
cooling.
this, or just settling to a long winter's nap.
Yeah, I like that, right?
It's like, what's going on here?
Right.
So, but before we get in there, because you got to roll up the sleeves and get in it. I'm just
Yeah.
going to do a quick.
And I'm not
recap.
playing this till November until I find out if this is true or not.
Thank you, Paul.
I'll give you a little runway to say, really?
I'm giving a presentation next week, and they're probably half listening to this, going, "What's she going to say?"
Yeah, all right.
So, all right. So it's interesting because as we're segueing into the fall market, which we functionally did 4 months ago,
Right.
but now we're really literally segueing into fall. We have 3,726 active listings, which is down 2% over the week prior. We put 2181. We have 2181 in escrow, which is down 3% from a week prior. And remember, the first week of September was a holiday week, so it was a weird week. There's very little data. We sold 590 in the most recent week, and of course that was up 67% because the first week was only like 3 business days. Median price did fall a little. It fell 1%, so we're now at 950,000 for the county.
See, that's the proof. It's crashing right there.
Or it's a seasonal adjustment because there is a bell curve for median price every year going back as far as we've tracked it.
I bought my house for $250,000 20 years ago, and so what do I care if it's worth $950 or $970 or $940 or $1.2 million? Yeah, it sounds great if I'm trying to sell it tomorrow, but over time, it's still gone up 3 or 4 times
And
what I
put a
paid for it.
pin in that. We'll get back to that if I want to sell it tomorrow.
Yeah.
So based upon the current rate of absorption, we've got about 1.71 months of standing inventory. It would take just under 2 months to sell everything.
Okay.
And our list price to sold price ratio, even though we had a little bit of erosion on the median price, it popped up 1%. So last time I checked, we were at 98% of the contract price to the list price, and now we're at 99%. So this all speaks to just this wobbling. It's going up a little, it's going down a little. It's going
Right.
up a little, it's going down a little. So, I think the only thing that really surprised me was that there was 2% fewer active listings because everybody and their dog said we're going to get all these active listings building up, all this accumulation of supply, if you will, because no one's buying. And that's not what happened.
My dog did predict that.
See? Tell Fido he's wrong.
He was pretty sure about
He's
that. yeah.
wrong. So what I found interesting was that I, of course, expected inventory to accrue, prices to really be burdened because interest rates aren't being, alleviated anytime soon. In
Yeah.
fact, they're going to continue to go up. So
I think that's what drove the market down again because the Fed's pretty much signaled they're going to do another 3/4.
they said, we're keeping our promise. We told you we were going to do this. We're really going to do it.
Yeah, and people are like, oh, come on, really?
Yeah, hasn't it been enough? But I'm kind of a fan of someone saying, I'm going to do this, and then they do it.
Yeah.
I kind of think that's hot. That's my jam. That's veracity right there.
That's veracity. Truth.
So, so that's what our local market is doing right now. But we have so much more to talk about. So,
All right. So all the headlines say sales are plummeting. Sales. And does that mean prices are plummeting or just sales are plummeting?
and that's exactly it. Thank you for the clarification because sales people means the number of homes sold. That is not equivalent with prices. So what we're seeing is that, yes, median price is starting to taper a little bit. And the question is this truly loss of appreciation, or is it just the downward tapering that happens every fall as we go into winter?
Yeah.
And based upon inventory levels, my thought is it's just the seasonal adjustment. That's kind of where we are. And I am sort of encouraged because Altos Research, which is a big real estate data analysis company, they actually revised their projections because they were projecting this increase in inventory nationwide, and they were like, "Uh-oh, we were wrong." So what we all saw was in July there was a growth in inventory, there was growth in standing inventory, and then in August it sagged. So we're all scratching our heads going, okay, well, that thought pattern didn't pan out.
So would this is just off the top of my
Yeah.
head, would a tumble in prices, slight or serious, like happened in the Great Recession, or anything even remotely, if prices came from 950 back down to 750 or something here for the average price, if because there's fewer houses on the market or fewer people buying, so people panic. I got to sell my house today, so I'll take a lower offer. And the minute that's you did, then I got to take a lower offer. And everybody takes a lower offer. I'm bidding lower, and it starts driving it down here. Would that break the log jam open? Would that would sales of home? What's holding the prices back? Is it the
Sellers.
You think it's the
Oh,
sellers?
I know it's the sellers. Trust me, I have them.
Okay,
And they're
yeah.
all saying, F you. I'm not giving you a 19% or a 15% or a 20% discount. Go pound sand. I'll put my nephew in here. I'll rent it first. I will not take that. They won't, and they don't have to. They're sitting on piles of equity,
Right.
really low mortgage rates because they all refinance. They're like, screw it. I'll
Yeah.
put a renter in there first. I will wait it out. And they can. And that's the difference in this market to the recession, as you pointed out.
Right.
Back then, they were mostly underwater and they had interest rates on their mortgages that were likely continuing to increase.
Right.
We have the opposite scenario here. Most people here
So
have
that's
equity.
interesting. Let's take that apart again here. So you're saying that even if that sellers aren't panicking and lowering and accepting lower bids, and therefore will just hold on to these properties and take them off the market even.
Oh, yes, and they are. And that's part of why the inventory levels have gone down. Because the sellers are saying, nope, I'm not going to do that.
I've never heard that. The assumption is that the market sales have slowed simply because prices went up, interest rates went up, and buyers said, I can't play in that space. Sorry, I
That
can't
is
buy anything.
absolutely what happened. And that happened in April. I mean, the brakes hit, and the buyers who were in escrow in April continued to close those sales. So we saw really strong sales figures in May and even into June. But those buyers weren't writing additional offers after that period. So we started to hear the reports about sales prices degrading and the number of sales falling
But
from
you're
there.
the first person that's ever said, and it makes so much sense to me now that I'm thinking about this here. So when buyers hit the wall and couldn't pay anymore, I'd love to buy your house, but I can't pay
Can't.
that price, and I can't afford, particularly at that mortgage rate. So I'm out.
Right.
The assumption always is when that happens, the market adjusts and the sellers go, okay, I don't like it. I guess I missed the high part of the market, but I still want to sell because it's too much house for me. I still want to sell because I still made a ton of money and I want to cash in on I'm retiring or whatever the motivation, or I'm moving out of the state or whatever it is. There are people out there that you would think would start adjusting the prices. And you're saying the opposite is
I'm
happening.
saying yes and.
Okay.
Because going into this, for the last 28 months, or well, 24 months before, the drop off,
Right.
we had this huge run up. So sellers are putting their homes on the market a little bit above what the last guy sold for.
Right.
So now if they're having to take a little bit less than the last guy sold for, we arrive where we are.
Right.
So if they marked their house up 3% over the last guy and they got an offer that was 2% below what they were asking, okay, there was a 1% gain. And when that wasn't working, they were like, okay, I listed 3% above the last guy. I'm going to reduce my price. And we're seeing record numbers of price reductions for listings across the country. I'm going to reduce my price to be 1% below the last guy. And now they're getting offers and they're selling 1 to 2% below that. So we're seeing these little degradations in price appreciation.
But when the
because
buyer
these minor
comes in and says, I'll
adjustments.
give you 10% less than you're at, I'm going to come in lowball
They're
you.
saying no.
They're saying no.
Yeah.
Because you got a lot of people who don't have to sell,
Right.
and therefore
Right.
I don't have to sell.
Right.
So I'll just, I was going to sell maybe, I wasn't, but let's say I was going to sell, and instead I'll take that idea off the head and I'll see where this thing goes.
And to further compound this issue is, and I know because some of these are my clients and it makes me crazy. They say, I will not accept less than X for my house. No one's offering that. I don't care. That's what I want. That's what I see. And I still need to buy another place for whatever reason, I'm going to go buy the other place and just put a renter in here or just not put anyone in there. And that's what's part of suppressing our active inventory because they can afford to do that.
That's the difference, I think, this time, because they've either got paid off the house or they had a lot of equity in the house, and they're using that to buy something else, and the rent are so high that they can still pay, if they have a mortgage, that and maybe make some money. So maybe they never sell these
Anyone
houses.
over the age of 55 now, which is most of us in the county, because our population is aging.
Certainly me.
Right? Okay, so let's say that you decided that your home that you're living in is no longer suitable for you,
Yeah.
and you can't find the buyer at the price you want. You could take out an equity line against that house to use as down payment for another house that you want to live in, and you could get a reverse mortgage for the balance of it, meaning you wouldn't have to pay any money on that reverse mortgage if you didn't want to.
Yeah.
So you would have the equity payment that you're paying on the departure home, no payment on the reverse mortgage, and now you're holding up two pieces of property.
Yeah.
This is what's happening. We're locking up our inventory, and people here aren't stupid. They're getting really creative about ways to acquire property because they need to, and that's who's buying. The people who need to. I can no longer have stairs. I had to replace my knees. My wife had hip surgery.
Right.
I need a single level. Our Great Dane can't go up the stairs. I actually lived that dream at one point, so we need to get a single level.
Or people got divorced, or the spouse died, God
Or
forbid, or other
my
sorts of
company
things.
closed this location and they're moving me over there. You know, I had a lot of clients that worked in Lake Forest at a facility that was acquired by Pfizer, and they all moved back east. You know, so today in that scenario, those people may have opted not to sell and just bought the house back east. So there are these various things that are suppressing our active inventory, and yet we still have people. We have a lot of very educated millennials who are like, I am sick of living at home with my parents.
Yeah.
Uncle, I'm getting married. I'm going to have a baby. We need to start new households. And they are hell-bent on finding a house.
Right.
And if they can't find that Newport Beach, Eastside Costa Mesa home of their dreams, they're saying, fine, I'm going to settle for Costa Mesa, Westside. I'm going to settle for Laguna Niguel.
Or did they do the other thing that's been predicted and talked about forever? The next question is outflow, migration. I quit California. I'm going to Idaho. I'm going to Texas. I'm going to Tennessee.
You know, and that's interesting. As much as I had really hoped that that was going to happen,
You did? You want everybody to leave?
isn't that terrible? I'm a native Californian. I was born here, unlike
Yeah.
you and most people. I was born
I
here.
wasn't born here.
I know, and that's fine. I love you anyway. But California, our infrastructure is overburdened. You know, we're going to have failing utilities, our roadways, our bridges, on and on and on.
Water. Well, we have enough water to fill up.
Having fewer people here aids all of that,
Right.
in addition to taking some pressure on off of housing prices. But we, you know, as I said in prior months, people who study migration patterns had already predicted that California had reached its apex in population a few years ago, and we were already expecting to have a certain percentage of outflow of outward migration, and that's what's happening. But what's happening in our marketplace is that even for the less than 5% that are leaving, we were compensated by all the people during COVID who came and bought second homes here.
Yeah.
You know, they weren't selling anything. They were just gobbling up our inventory. So the locals here who, during incredibly low interest rates were like, yay, I can finally buy a beach house. Wait, no, I can't because everybody else is
How
outbidding
many
me.
people, has anybody ever studied that? How many people, well, particularly in the high-end markets, the Newport beaches and stuff here. I know you play in a lot of those spaces. I know somebody that got a ton of money. They lived in Texas. And as much as they bashed California, they bought a home in Newport. What one of those?
Newport Coast probably? Or,
Yeah, someone thing that overlooks the ocean.
Yeah.
And it's a 10,000 square foot house,
Right.
literally.
Right.
And
it's vacant most of the
It's
time.
vacant most of the time.
That is the story of our coastline because, as I've said before, compared to,
Because they couldn't get that in Texas.
and you can't get it in other parts of California. I
Right.
mean, especially if they want to have a yacht, and that dude probably does, right? We've
Right.
got marinas here, we've got coastline, and we are less expensive than most of the LA County coastline, certainly less expensive than Santa Barbara's coastline.
Yeah,
and
right. Oh, yeah.
A whole lot less expensive than the Monterey area.
Right.
So, and let's not even talk about San Francisco.
Right.
So, by comparison, we're inexpensive.
And even though Texas is on the ocean, it doesn't have
The Gulf is not the same.
No, it's not the same. And
Yeah.
so these are lifelong Texans. They got tons and tons of money from. They live in Austin. It's tech-driven stuff. And as many people I know who are moving to Austin say, I'm out of here, I'm going to Austin or someplace like that. Houses are cheaper. At some point, the wealthy there are bringing money back, just like the Asians did for a long time here, the
Exactly.
Chinese and stuff, and they have these second homes sitting
We're seeing a
empty.
lot of the domestic and the Europeans here to kind of offset the Asians because it's become very hard to get money out of China.
Right.
So I would venture to guess probably 1 in 3 of the $5 million plus homes
Really?
are not permanent residences.
Oh my goodness.
And it's hard to track the data because most of them have them entitled in various trusts and
Yeah.
LLCs and entities. So you have to like really pull a lot of threads to figure out.
You'd have to ring the doorbell and see if anybody answered. Yeah.
The maid would certainly answer.
The maid would
and say,
answer,
"Get
yeah.
the hell off my lawn."
Yeah, but that's I see that there's a trend I don't think anybody's talking about. So if you're waiting for those homes to tumble, to come down, that high end part of the market, because they're the hardest. Let me ask you that question. I'm going off script here again, but these are people who are buying cash anyway. What's percentage when you get up above 5? How many people are even applying for jumbo loans? Or
It was split about 50-50.
Was it?
Because
Okay.
money was so cheap.
Right.
I mean, smart people are like, well, that's really cheap money.
Right.
It's like, that's kind of irresistible.
2.5%.
Yeah,
right.
I'll finance part of it,
Right.
But yeah, there's a lot of cash in there. And those people are the most insulated from these market vagaries. The market swings don't touch them.
You want the house? So that's what this
Right.
couple did. They didn't care. They just wanted a house on the coast.
I want that house with that view.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
if I got to pay another $1 million for it, or another $1 million less, or up or down, I don't care. It's
Fine.
irrelevant. Yeah.
Fine. And it's a status symbol. People, who
Very
have
much so.
these status, these bespoke homes, they're not going to fire sell them.
No.
They're not. They're going to hang on to them. So what I'm seeing, because I've been tracking days on market, because that obviously gives us an idea of if it's taking longer to sell things. And so far, year to date, homes priced above $5 million are still selling at the same rate that they did last year, which was much faster than the historical norms ever. So we're not seeing degradation there yet at all.
All right. So if we've still got increasing mortgage rates, and seems like they will continue to go up as
sure.
interest rates go up, who the heck is buying them, and how are they qualifying for these homes? And I guess that differs. That's what we're talking about. If you're at the high end, you're still paying cash. Maybe if you're at the lower end, you got to be more creative somehow.
Yeah, and it's been interesting to the prior conversation about there are some people who just have to buy homes. So who I'm seeing is buying homes now, in spite of all these obstacles. Are we can't forget people getting divorced. I mean,
Yeah,
there was
right.
this suppression of divorces, and all of a sudden, boom, they all came out of the pipeline.
Right.
When we
And then you got to sell the house because we got to split
Right.
the asset.
Well, and usually they repurchase one, sometimes two homes. It just depends upon who's got what and where they are. So you can expect you're going to sell one and they're going to buy one, which does us no favors in terms of adding inventory.
No.
But they are compelled. They are compelled to do these things. People who have children and just are out of space, they are compelled to buy a new home. I've had a couple of families come to me and say, we need to buy a home in that neighborhood over there because that public school teaches our children X, Y, and Z classes that we have to have, and we're actually economizing and we don't want them in private schools anymore. So they're
Right.
starting to get judicious about, okay, let's do these local moves because overall it benefits our family, but it saves the budget. It's really this interesting strategy. So, and we're seeing people get creative. They're getting money from family members for down payments. They're going in with multiple generations, to buy homes
Asians
together.
have been doing that forever. They all pool their money together to help each other.
And Latinos and Europeans
Yes, right.
and Americans were just stubborn, and we're finally doing it too.
Right.
We're finally doing it too. It's been very
I remember
interesting.
when I bought my house 1,000,000 years ago for $250,000, which seemed like a lot of money back then for what I was getting, this little house.
Right.
And I did go to my dad. I didn't desperately need it, but I went to my dad, who was still alive, and he had some money, and I said, can you help me with this? Give me $20,000. He didn't say, sure, son. He came out of the Depression. Nobody helped me. No, I'm not going to help you. And we had to get in a real debate about it, and he finally begrudgingly did so and hated it for the rest of his life.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, because that was just not that was like an admission of I'd failed or something here. I needed help or whatever. Now I don't hear any of that. Everybody.
No, our
assumes that.
psychology about money and home ownership has changed drastically since the recession. It really has. And that reminds me, I was thinking this morning about my father and stepmother, and they live in a house that's like $2.6 million up in Los Gatos, which is where I'm from. And she told me that she bought that, some 40 odd years ago for like $60,000. And she too borrowed money from her dad for the down payment.
Yeah.
But thank God she kept it because it
Yeah.
was a sleepy little town in the foothills that,
Right.
there was just this little quaint village, and now it's the heart of Silicon Valley.
It is. Well, it's amazing. So they are finding a way to make it work if you really do it. Maybe you're cutting back expenses. Maybe you're pooling your resources. How about roommates? People are bringing in roommates?
In
and
some
all
cases they are. I'm not seeing as much of that as I expected. I am seeing siblings going together, brothers and sisters,
that?
and that
My
sort of thing.
son-in-law, my daughter, couldn't really afford it when they bought their
Yeah.
condo, townhouse, whatever. It was kind of a glorified apartment that got turned into a condo.
Mm-hmm.
And they brought in a couple of roommates to help
Yeah.
make those payments.
Bravo.
Yeah.
Because they're still getting the equity growth.
Right.
And something that I'm recommending to my sellers, and I'm starting to see buyers embrace, is this. If you go to a seller, if your problem as a buyer, and it is for most, is the monthly payment.
Right.
This monthly payment is hideously expensive.
The nut.
Yeah, there are ways to buy down interest. You can prepay a ton of interest in most circumstances with most lenders. They love getting their interest up front. So you could,
I didn't know you could do that until I just signed up to put solar in my house, and they let me, for I got another $1,000, buy down the interest rate from 4.5% to 2.5%.
yeah.
And I was like, okay, that sounds. What's the catch here?
Right.
I'd never heard that before.
They get their money in advance. They're happy,
Yeah,
right? Same
right.
with mortgage lenders. If they get their money in advance, they're happy. So let's say you're looking at $1 million home, and the seller has been on the market for 4 months, and he's getting frustrated, and he hasn't sold it yet, and he's considering a $50,000 price reduction. But you're saying, well, look, if you'll pay $20,000 in prepaid interest for me, I'll buy your house because I get the payment I want, you get the price you want. He's like, yeah. The seller has saved himself $30,000 by doing that. And in most cases, he's got to check with a CPA. Most cases, that $20,000 is a cost of sale. He might be able to write that off. So win, win, win. These are the types of things we're starting to see. People aren't just blithely going in, going whatever.
You need a strategy now. All the more reason you got to work with somebody, whether it's you or somebody, to strategize this stuff, because it's got to be creative. Unless you're at that high end and it's all cash, it's hard to figure out how to make it all work these days.
And you've got to be really, really careful. All of my deals, probably forever, but all of my deals certainly this year have been riddled with just shenanigans.
Really?
Yeah, and it's been random things you never would have expected. Like one deal, we couldn't close it because the appraiser's license expired before the escrow was going to close.
Oh, wow.
Seriously, people?
Yeah.
So this is why I say I am vexed by these big sales teams where there's, Joe Blow's Big Swingin' D, my favorite, who goes out there and says, I sold 300 homes last year because he's got all his minions doing everything. And
Right.
these minions they're not terribly experienced usually, and they're not talking to each other. Joe Blow would never know that the appraiser's license for the appraisal for the financing had expired because he's too busy going off and signing the next guy up.
Absolutely.
And the person who
Doesn't even know who the appraiser is, probably.
has no idea any of that even occurred. So it's like, that's why I started a bespoke company, because I
Yes.
need to be hands-on at every level.
Right.
I've got one right now. This dear sweet client, she sold a larger departure home because she needed to buy a smaller one that was less expensive. We found her a fantastic buy. She's in escrow. She's done everything on time or early. She's got all her money in escrow. She's waiting for her lender to say, okay, we're ready to send the loan docs over there. And the lender's like, hang on. The Homeowners Association's master insurance policy expired today. So
Wow.
can you imagine that
All these
townhome
moving
community,
parts.
if it burned to the ground the day after she bought it, they couldn't rebuild it. Thank God we found out right
Yikes.
before. So, of course, we've delayed close of escrow while we scramble to get this insurance renewed. But these are the types of things that the people who have had their license for 18 months don't even know exist.
No, exactly. And all they were doing is just taking the order, showing you a house, and then taking the order and writing up the paperwork. And yes,
And reading the scripts they were told to read.
reading the
It
script.
just
they were told, yeah.
it just hurts my head when we're in a market like this that is heavily nuanced and is moving and shifting. Like you said, last week it was this, next week it might be that. I mean, we
Right.
don't really know. The experts don't know. So we really, really have to pay attention to every little thing.
All right. Well, let's pay attention to your sponsor here. Let's get that.
Okay.
Let's get that out in the open. This show is funded in part by some great guys called Ford and DiUlio. They're an Orange County-based boutique litigation firm with experienced attorneys, a smaller boutique firm with guys who worked in these big law firms, and that gave them experience and knowledge. But they did so when they created their company to create the same sort of bespoke client advocacy where they're really paying attention to all the moving parts, and they're really there to provide value and deliver effective and efficient service, not just process your claim.
Right.
So if you really need somebody who's going to fight for you and can stay on top of all the complexities of litigation these days, then you might want to consider FordDiulio.com. Just like it sounds, FordDiulio.com. Well, here's my question of the day. If
Sure.
prices are falling,
Mhm.
then why not just wait to buy? If I'll wait till the bottom. I want to buy at the bottom. I don't want to buy at the top.
You know, I get a lot of that. And that's a great question. And for some people, sure, why not? I mean, we don't really know where this is going. Maybe there's merit in waiting. But I do know that none of us, and by us, I mean the analysts who are studying inventory levels, none of us expects that there's going to be vastly more inventory next year. There's not. So if you're willing to wait a couple years, okay, great. And we know interest rates are going to go up some more. That's
Yeah.
been promised to us.
Right.
And you can be certain rental rates will continue to increase because they always do.
So you're going to get squeezed both ways. Your rent's going to
Right.
go up, and maybe that price of the house will come down a little bit, but the price of borrowing the money is going to go
Right.
up.
So you've got net offset there. And I don't know about you, but most people, they want to buy the house that they want to buy. And when
Yeah.
there's fewer to choose from, if that
Because
house
the baby's coming, or we've got two kids already. And I mean,
Right.
the time is now. We got to
Right.
do this now. I can't just put it off forever.
if you see your dream home today and you say, I'm going to pass on it because I'm going to wait for prices to fall, I cannot promise anyone that that specific dream home is going to come up again anytime soon
Or anything like it.
or anything like it.
Yeah.
So, it's like if you're willing to take that chance, okay, great. But unless you're self-employed and you have other tax write-offs, you're paying higher rent, you're not getting the tax benefit of owning a home, you're not stabilizing your housing payment by owning your own home. For most people, there is wisdom in not waiting. But I'm not going to convince anyone to buy a house. If you don't think the time is right, okay, great, wait. But my advice to my family would be, if you find a house you love now, let's go in and craft the best strategy and buy it now.
And the other question I hear a lot is, then why not just give up on Southern California or Orange County and go somewhere else? There's
Yeah.
a million cheaper markets where the prices, I don't know if this is true or not, but some of these more volatile markets, I'll say Vegas. I don't even know if Vegas is really
It is one of them. Yeah.
has that kind of fluctuation, so prices are falling faster there. They were cheaper there to begin with.
Yeah.
Or Texas or other places like that.
Las Vegas, Austin, Texas, the Dallas-Fort Worth area, Orlando, Florida, Denver, Colorado. These
Yeah.
are all areas where analysts are saying had the greatest inward migration. And interestingly now, those exact same areas are the same ones that have the greatest price reductions for their active inventory.
Yeah,
So they
right.
went up the highest and they're already coming down the fastest.
Right.
So, okay, fine, you can move there, but if the community is already destabilizing, what does that say about your employment options there? Can you still work remotely? Because I think a lot of people were thinking they could do that, and
Right.
people are starting to revisit that. So, and what people also forget is
Florida particularly. People moved to Florida,
Mhm.
and I'm just going to remotely work there, and
Right.
it's cheaper, and all of a sudden, and again, not to get political or otherwise, but there is a certain lifestyle that comes in living all this. Not just the weather. I always thought it was just the weather. That's why I moved out of the Midwest. The weather drove me out of the Midwest.
that, right?
But having been here, I don't think anybody talks about this enough. I had a very good friend of mine, unfortunately died a couple years ago, but he was offered bigger jobs in other states. He was in sales. And he consistently turned them down to be like the career step up he was looking for, to be the national sales manager. But he had to live in Phoenix, or had to live in Texas, or had to live in Michigan, or someplace
Right.
there. And he consistently turned those down. And I said, "You're so driven by money. Why?" He said, "At some point, there isn't enough money to make me go back and live in those areas."
Yeah, and while
Now, he was thinking weather. Now it's
Sure.
getting politicized even more. I'm not sure I could live in certain parts of the country. Just as I've heard other people from Texas and
Right.
other things say, I'm not sure I could live in California where you guys are too crazy.
And I get that. And I think a lot of the people who did leave California did so because they disagree with the way that the state is being run.
Right.
And I respect that. And if you don't agree with anything, I really subscribe to vote with your feet and leave and don't
Right.
support it, because that's how I operate. Sometimes to my detriment. I offend people. I'm like, no, I'm not going to go there. And no, I'm not going to say this to you and
Right.
whatever. But as much
Which
as
is why the blue states are getting bluer and the red states are getting redder. The tribes
Yeah.
are moving around,
Yeah.
and we're not getting a lot of, used to be, particularly in Orange County, a very diverse.
we're
setup
in
here.
separate silos very much.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So we're moving to separate camps now here too.
And
And that plus the weather, which was always a
Yeah.
big thing in the lifestyle. I heard somebody else say this. They said, I could live anywhere, but I live here and not always easily live here. I wish I could move somewhere else. It's cheaper. There's less taxes, less regulation. I get all of those arguments. Why don't you? because I just love the lifestyle here. I love
Yeah.
the weather. I love the whole vibe. I love what's going on here. I love the choices, the opportunity, the excitement. It's at ground zero. Things are being invented here and stuff.
Hmm.
That's not happening in the middle of Mississippi somewhere.
It's
Sorry,
not.
Mississippi or someplace.
No, exactly.
Michigan, where I came
And
from.
I would like to see a lot of people go somewhere else. But as a true fiduciary, I have to call it like I see it and say, well, okay, are you aware of, the cost to insure your property is more expensive in most states that have weather.
Yeah,
The
right.
property taxes is significantly higher proportionately in most other states than ours. I mean, yes, we have state income tax, and that sucks. If you're a self-employed person,
Electricity's higher because you've got to
utilities
you
are
got to
higher.
run the
Yeah.
air conditioning all the
Yeah.
time, or you got to run the heater all
Yeah.
winter long and
Yeah.
stuff here.
Your houses literally need more maintenance there because you have to deal
Oh,
with freezing pipes and wrapping pipes and
right.
all of that. It's when you do the whole cost analysis and compare your potential income, the gain usually isn't great enough for enough people. I think that most people who leave, they leave on principle more than anything else. And again, I respect that.
And that's different because it used to be on cost
Hmm.
alone, or it was on the Great Migration to California from the Midwest, where I grew up from, was all weather based,
Right.
and then to a certain degree lifestyle, where I'm going to see beautiful girls and endless beaches and all that
Right.
dream. We're sitting here in
Right.
the middle of frozen winter, so I think that was a lot of it: the weather, the weather, the weather. But now it's become the lifestyle. I like the way things feel here,
Hmm.
and I think it is being driven by political choices more and more.
Yeah.
There are
Yeah.
parts of the country I don't know that I could live in, and they tell me they couldn't live here.
There are parts of the country that if I visited with blue hair, they'd run
Yeah,
me out.
yeah.
They'd say, "Who is this wingnut from California? Get out of here!"
I'll tell you a funny story. So I know I'm vamping here, but years and years ago, my wife and I were flying through. We got laid over in Tennessee. We were flying from someplace to someplace, for some reason we had to switch planes in Tennessee,
That's fascinating.
in Memphis.
Okay.
And so we had like a 4-hour layover. The plane was delayed, and so we literally left the airport and said, "Well, let's go see something." So we went and saw Elvis's house and some other stuff. The only time I've been to Memphis, and
I
it's
love
kind of
it.
cool. And so we had like 4 or 5 hours to kill rather than just sit in the airport. We rented a car and drove out and saw some stuff. And the minute we got off the airport,
Hmm.
I stopped someplace to do something, and my wife had tennis shoes on,
Hmm.
and we got off a plane. And so we said, so we just got off the plane, and this woman came over to her and said, "You're from California, aren't you?" And she said, "How did you know that? What if I got a big sign on my back?" She said, "You got tennis shoes on in Tennessee. You don't have dress shoes on."
Hmm.
And
In the South, women dress. Everyone dresses.
and
Yes.
she was so shocked and sort of
Hmm.
offended, like I'm on an airplane. I can't I wear tennis shoes all the time. I can't just wear tennis shoes.
Yeah.
But you're out in a
Yeah.
restaurant, honey.
Oh yeah.
And,
Oh yeah.
and that's when we both said, "Wow, I don't know if I could live here."
Uh-huh. It was interesting when I was last in the south of France. It sounds so hoity-toity.
Yeah, the last of my many trips to the South.
Anyway,
the last time I was there.
I was with a friend going to the local market, and there was like this still that fell. And I looked at her, and she said, "Yeah, they can tell you're not from here." All right.
Yeah,
And I didn't have blue hair. I'm like, whatever.
right. So I guess some of those, that's always been California's appeal.
Yeah.
We can do what you come here to do what you want,
Right.
and to be who you want. We have a very libertarian streak, really, actually.
We I guess we do. I try to stay out of politics, but
Right.
but yeah, and
Which we
that,
don't associate with a democratically controlled state, but everybody came here to do their own thing.
right.
Right.
Just let me do my thing. And
Right.
what breaks my heart is that get back to your question is like, why not, why
Pack
not
up
wait?
and
Why
go.
not wait to buy? Why not sell and buy somewhere else? And people are like, what is going to happen? And unfortunately, this next whole year, the next 15 months, we're going to be having, it's Groundhog Day. We're going to be having this conversation.
Yeah, right.
There's not enough sellers and not enough buyers, and there's not really much appreciation in price. It's going to maybe wobble a little bit up and down. It's going to be fantastically boring.
And it's that duality I've been seeing before. Not enough buyers.
Mhm.
I get that because prices went up and mortgages went up, so it cools down buying. It seems like there's been a dramatic drop in buying.
There has been, yeah.
But what I didn't expect to hear, and what you opened my eyes to, is this idea of sellers too.
Right.
Because the sellers are just saying, if that's the case, I'm going to wait it out too. I don't have to sell, or maybe I'll just put a renter in and I'll never sell.
Yeah.
I was going to sell this house and move somewhere else. Maybe I'll just be a landlord now.
Yeah. It's interesting because in August, again, we had 40% less active inventory than we normally would have, but we only had 28% fewer sales. So it's like, oh my gosh, there was 28 sales dropped 28%. Well, yeah, inventory fell 40%.
You had the Otto, whose last name escapes me. Katrina.
Mm-hmm.
And he's the president of the California Real Estate
Association of Realtors, yeah.
Right. And I got to believe that organization, if they're a bellwether for how many people are doing real estate, that the membership is at an all-time high.
It is.
I got to believe that with fewer buyers and fewer sellers, meaning fewer transactions, that that's going to clear out a lot of the part-timers and the weekend realtors.
God, I hope so. But people get ready. If you think a lot of people are knocking on your door now, it's going to get worse.
Yeah. Right.
It's going to get worse. And it's a whole nother conversation. How people are out, how new agents are trained, how they are supervised. Again, back to the whole conversation I had with Otto. But part of the reason we had so many 0 days on market deals was because people were desperately scratching out these off-market deals. They could be guaranteed a payday.
Will realtors ever start to move more into the rental market and be rental agents and not just real estate agents? I only say that for two reasons. If you got me thinking, if more people are going to go hold onto their houses,
yes.
Who's going to rent those houses
Right.
for them? The landlord's the owner's not going to run ads in the paper or something and
Well, in tenant screening, it's a job. And I can tell you the only way to make a living at it and not starve to death is the economy of scale.
Right.
So I think a few will add that, like we're adding that to my company. Gina's going to be heading the property management portion of it. But you really need a lot of doors to make it worth your while because you make very little money doing rentals. So I think a few will, but I hope that we see some attrition and these people realize this is not an easy job. Being a fiduciary is a big responsibility, and perhaps it's not.
I can't tell you how many people over the last couple of years, particularly during COVID, went out and got a real estate license.
Yeah, I know.
And suddenly they're telling me, hey, good news, I'm going to sell real estate part-time. And because they felt they had more time and the opportunity was there and anybody can sell a house, it's just you list it and it sells in 24 hours. I want in on that. It's easy money here.
Yeah, and all the reality TV shows have only sustained this myth.
Right.
It's a bit
got this new
much.
one coming out here, the Selling the OC or something here.
Yeah. Well, it's the Oppenheim group that's in LA selling Sunset or what, I don't know.
Selling Sunset. Right,
yeah,
exactly.
and so they've expanded down here. And well, yeah, if you go down, Coast Highway in Corona Del Mar, there's like 8 bespoke or 8 luxury real estate brokerages there, all competing for less market share. So I'm really curious to see how that's going to pan out. You know, headlines have said that Compass is bleeding money, and that intrigues me because from what I've seen, they've grown through acquisition.
Right.
They've approached me. They approach all the small companies and just bring them under their umbrella.
Right.
And what they are doing is very attractive, and they seem to have a really great business ethic and model, and they've got great technology. So I will be very disappointed if they can't pull out of this. I like them, but we'll see. I don't know.
See.
We'll
So
see.
that's the answer for today. We'll see.
I don't know. Maybe.
I don't know. Could be. Get back to me next week here. Well, you won't hear this show until November for sure now here. 'Cause
Stop, because I need everyone to be aware. They need to plan to go to the Veterans Legal Institute Gala in November. So
All
you
right.
can't air this
a week later.
then. No. So it's important. I'm on the board for Vets Legal, and their annual gala is so much fun. It's Lawyers for Warriors.
Yes.
And it's going to be
Just
held
that
at the
name alone, what sounds like a cool idea.
It just kills.
Right.
It's going to be at the Lion Air Museum on November 7th. There is still time to get your tickets. This sells out. And truly, if you have anything you can donate, $500, send them a donation. If you've got a vacation house, you can let someone, auction that off for a week.
Yeah.
Go to vetslegal.com and find the information and donate. And by all means, buy tickets. You'll see me there.
Okay. All right. Well,
Now you can air it.
now I can I stick my head out and see if the sky's falling today? Because I feel like things are falling or about to fall, and yet you're saying maybe not, because even if they want to fall, the sellers aren't going to let them fall. I'm not sure. Then I won't sell my house.
I have several of those stubborn sellers right now, so I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. All right. Okay. All right. Thanks for giving us, I don't know, a little assurance. The sky's not falling.
It's not. See, this is good news.
This is good news. All
The
right.
sky is not
That's okay.
falling. So for now, until next week, just follow This Week with Wendy anywhere you get your favorite podcasts.
Okay.